Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first, always. And here's Samson's take. I title it, Common Sense at Last. Stop the wastes. The other day, I was speaking to a group of graduating students of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and I was sharing with them my surprise at the paradox of Africa's wealth in natural resources juxtaposed against its persistent poverty. Africa possesses 40% of the world's gold. Ghana now, we like to, as it were, pride ourselves as leading in the production of a number of natural resources. 90% of the world's chromium and platinum is here in Africa, 90%. 65% of the world's arable land is right here in Africa. Yet, Africa remains a symbol of poverty and underdevelopment, reliant on external aid, while its own resources are mismanaged and sometimes, bluntly speaking, just stolen by its own people and leaders. I will be remiss if I did not celebrate the 68th Independence Day celebration. I suppose I am a broken record criticizing the needlessly wasteful expense of scarce resources every 6 March by a perpetual begging nation. We've gone to the IMF 17 times. Potential that we'll go back again, right? A nation that is unable to get its many citizens out of poverty. That's what we do to ourselves. Spend a huge budget celebrating Independence Day. For more than 6 decades, we put children at risk in the scorching sun. Some of them suffocate, including the officials, security officials. They suffocate and fall. Yet there is little to show by way of a sense of the independence story. We spend the entire year teaching the children who march in the scorching sun on this day. We spend the entire year teaching them publicly how not to be patriotic, but to be partisan to destroying the country. Yes, many can barely sing the national anthem or intone the national pledge to save their very own lives. Children studying under trees without basic learning aids line up filthy and dusty roads to salute the very people whose corrupt conduct deprives them the modicum of decent life. I spoke to graduates of the KNUST about becoming leaders who truly have love for country and Africa. The experienced, skillful, and brilliant editor of My Joy Online recorded that quote in a scathing critique of misplaced priorities. Anyenini questioned Ghana's annual expenditure on Independence Day celebrations. Quote, what are we truly celebrating when we remain economically dependent? How many years on? I applauded Tanzania's recent decision to redirect Independence Day funds towards building school dormitories and infrastructure. And I called it a model of pragmatic leadership that we all must wake up to. Yes, some common sense at last, Mr. President. Commit the 20 million budget that has been saved to a pro-poor project each year. In our most difficult times, when 850,000 citizens were pushed into poverty, that's only the official number as recorded by the World Bank. President Akufo-Addo rejected every cry and advice to reduce the size of government or take advantage of such low-hanging fruits. In Kenya, a whole cabinet was dismissed in response to crisis by the people. Crisis to which the people cried to their leaders about. Akufo-Addo will not even reshuffle, let alone sack his finance minister, as demanded by his own MPs. The Kolebu Renal unit had people dying each day. At least 19 people were recorded dead over a period. Why? Because there was a debt of 4 million. Money, some of which could have been raised from the millions spent on the independence, or I don't like calling it independence. I like to call it Independence Day. We are still independence. We depend on IMF to survive. Imagine if the budget for celebrating the 6th March each year over the last 60 years, over the last 50, 40, 20, 10 years was committed to setting up 150 or even 10 people in some business. Imagine the half of the budget was committed to eliminating schools under trees. You don't need all the budget. Imagine if even a quarter of the budget was committed to any such need, to a modest health facility in deprived communities, like my village, Gambibigo. Imagine the 95% savings from the 20 million cedi budgets for this year's celebration was committed to farming or even put in an investment, and the proceeds used to support farmers or educational scholarships. Mr. President, that's what I say is common sense at last. And let not this be the first and the last. Let this be the new order. That is what is meant by resets. And that is my take. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And my guests are seated. So let's begin to get into the main issues that take our attention this morning. My guest in the studio from the National Economic Dialogue that is making a lot of recommendations for the government to follow. And Atuforsen says that he is going to take the recommendations as his Bible, even as he prepares for the budget next week. Professor John Gachi, member of the National Economic Dialogue Committee. Also here is Dr. Abdul Tia Kabiru Mahama, MP for Wale Wale. He's been speaking on economics and used to do that in the office of the Vice President. Kofi Bento, Senior Vice President and Policy Analyst, Imani Africa. They were also at the National Economic Dialogue and had very intriguing, interesting views to share. Franklin Kujo led that. As far as they are concerned, good governance is very important for all of this. Dr. Arthur Kobina Kennedy, physician and political risk analyst, also join us. Political activist, I meant to say, political activist also joins us here via Zoom. Thank you all, gentlemen, for making the time to join us this morning. Thank you, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right. Yes. Okay, so you look on your screen, the SOEs, there's been something that's been going on with them, and that has been mentioned as a major issue that is driving our economy down. The ECG, Gradeco, VRA, Tema Shipyard, Ghana Railway Limited, just giving you a list of the state-owned enterprises. Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Limited, the Gihok Distilleries, Precious Minerals Marketing Company, which is now becoming the Gold Board, Accra Digital Center, Airtel, Ghana. Now, as you look on the screen, you see the debt of the state-owned enterprises, and this is quoted in billions. So you are looking from 2022, 2023, and 2024. You are seeing in figures from 177 in 2022 to 216 in billion. Now 250 billion. 250 billion. That's how much they have plunged us into. So much debt. The total debt of the state-owned enterprises as of 2023, you also see in your short. It's quoted once again in the billions. And these are the things that we are told partly driving the economy down or central in the operations. Then we were also introduced to the developments at the Bank of Ghana. And Dr. Siama tells us that there's going to be some audits to ask the questions whether, there was value for money in the process. We have paid $230 million, $230 million, and we're left with a balance of $31.8 million to pay. But guess what? The issue that Ghanaians are getting really concerned about is that we spent $11.1 million on furniture and furnishings. Integrated electronic system cost us $15.8 million. The ICT system and network cost us $8.6 million. And the cost of the headquarters building, as you may have become aware, started at $81.8 million, went to 121.1, 222.2, then to $261.3.8 million. So they have been punching and looking at the various parts of the economy where the economy is hurting. Now, there are recommendations that the government is to follow. Will they follow it? Let's hear what President Mahama said and committing himself to implementing the recommendations at the economic dialogue.
Gathered here to create a powerful platform where government officials, policymakers, business leaders, economists, industry experts, development partners, and other key figures come together to shape the future of our nation. The insights, diverse perspectives, and actionable recommendations that emerge from these discussions must transcend theoretical frameworks and drive real, impactful decisions that will guide our national economy forward. Throughout our engagement, we'll focus on practical strategies to restore macroeconomic stability and pave the way for long-term economic transformation. This includes developing policies that stimulate growth and create sustainable job opportunities for our rapidly growing population. We'll also examine the structural reforms that are necessary to unleash the private sector's potential and make it truly the engine of growth that drives job creation and innovation. Strengthening economic governance institutions will be a key topic of discussion, ensuring transparency and accountability at all levels of government, while taking decisive action to combat corruption and other things that hinder our progress. It is vital that as we move towards a more prosperous future, and that the economic gains we achieve are distributed equitably, leaving no one behind and fostering inclusive growth that benefits every sector of society, from the most marginalized communities to the industrial leaders of tomorrow. This dialogue is a defining moment, and our decisions must set the course for a more resilient, prosperous, and equitable economy for generations to come. When I assumed office barely 2 months ago, I inherited an economy that was in a state of deep crisis. One that was weighted down by numerous challenges. The economy was reeling from unprecedented levels of debt, soaring inflation, high unemployment, declining levels of foreign direct investment, and low business confidence. The financial struggles that our nation is facing have not arisen overnight. They have been the result of several years of financial mismanagement, irresponsible borrowing, reckless spending, and weak leadership. That
Ghana has not performed well in revenue mobilization compared to its peers. Ghana's domestic revenue mobilization has stagnated in the last decade and remained below our peers. Ghana collected 13.5% of GDP in revenue, tax revenue. Collection from other major taxes remain low, especially value-added tax, as compared to our peers. Numerous exemptions and complexity of tax system have a detrimental impact on revenue. Almost all state-owned enterprises are in the red. Almost all of them are in the red. From the Electricity Company of Ghana to the Agricultural Development Bank. Almost all of them are in the red. In fact, beginning from the year 2021, 2022, and 2023, you will see that Cocoa Board posed some profit of 2.2 billion in the year 2023. Your Excellency, this is artificial profit. This profit is because they failed to service their debt because of the debt suspension. And so all the cocoa bills that were due at the time, they failed to pay because of debt suspension. Subsequently, this debt still exists, and so we will need to take action to restructure most of the state-owned enterprises.
The comprehensive report of the National Economic Dialogue will be submitted to the Presidency for consideration and implementation, which to call on government to 1. Prioritize efforts to restore macroeconomic stability and regain confidence in the economy by enhancing coordination between fiscal and monetary policy operations and achieve alignment, reviewing the foreign exchange retention regime to support economic stability, implementing major tax reforms that expand the tax net, including property taxes, revise VAT rates, and address revenue leakages, overhauling and ensuring compliance with the Public Finance Management Act, 2016 Act 921, and reform the Fiscal Responsibility Act, 2018 982.
Right. So you had the president, you had Dr. Kasiel Atoforsen, the finance minister, and then Ishmael Yamson at the National Economic Dialogue. So let's come here and begin to look at this. There have been people from across the spectrum, gentlemen, who have been showering a lot of praises on the government for doing this and to seek to get a buy-in of everybody to make this the country's problems, how to resolve them. Kofi, let me start with you. Do you like the Kwame Pienings, Dr. Amwako, KY Amwakos, and all of those people? Are you this positive?
Well, when it comes to economic dialogues, and good morning to everyone. Honestly, I've lived through too many of them. So I think there is a negative, there is a positive. So I just want to be clear. I don't want to sound negative, but I want to be very clear about this. We've lived through too many. That is one. Which one should I start with, the negative or the positive? Let's start with the negative, and then we'll do the positive later. Listen, if you put yourself up for election to lead this country, and you tell us you know the problems, and you have ideas about how to solve it, I have a problem when you get into office, you call everybody and say, how do we solve this? Now, the negative aspect of it is it that you don't have an idea? Or you do have an idea, but you're not going to tell us, and basically you're wasting our time. Now, I would have thought that a better way, a more compressed way, a more focused discussion would have been something like, these are the problems we have identified. These are the solutions I suggest we apply. And then let's discuss the solutions. But when it's an open free-for-all and everybody is coming and saying, what the ideas and whatever it is, I have a bit of a problem with it.
But this was part of his campaign. He said, I will do this.
And I had a problem with that at the time of the campaign. Because, see, we work in CSOs. We look at the situation, okay? I tell people all the time, Ghana is a difficult situation, but nothing in Ghana is difficult. We just don't want to do the hard stuff. So, look, I said the negative of it is, I wonder whether it is because there are no ideas. Put them forth and let's discuss the ideas. But when you have a free-for-all, I have a problem with that. Now, the positive, it is always good to discuss issues, to dialogue, to widen the net and bring ideas, beyond just your political party. So to that extent, it's a very useful exercise.
And within just your political party, you at Imani have said that is normally do you say cocooned or their echo chamber that they get in so they don't get to hear diverse views?
Yes.
So if they do this, it's positive.
So that's the positive. So you avoid the echo chamber effect, okay? Now, but again, when you put such great minds together, I think you should focus the discussion. And I pull from the fact of we've been through too many of these. What did we get from them? And why would this be different? Look, I am happy in a sense that we did that. I just wish we had optimized it and done more. I made my contribution. I wasn't there, but my president was there. We had meetings. I made my contributions through him to the discussion. But I worry about whether this will become one of the talk shops of the past, or it's going to create some sort of difference, compared to the past. And I want to make this point, and I keep repeating it. We know our problems. We know the solutions, but there's a Ghanaian syndrome. We don't want to pay the price. We don't want to do the things that are difficult that will solve the problems, but we want the effect, we want the outcomes of those things. It will never work. We need to make difficult decisions. We need to take difficult, actions, and then we'll get the kind of results that we require. But this whole idea of we want something, but we don't want to pay the price, we should move from it. So, look, in the next few weeks, I'm looking forward to seeing concrete action points coming out. I like what the Minister of Finance said, that he's going to use this as his Bible. But it also worries me. Because honestly, I'm telling you, you should come to the office with all the things that have gone on, with clarity in terms of our 60% of what you want to do, instead of a Bible that you just got to know about a week ago. So there's a certain balance here. I'm hopeful.
The president did a State of the Nation. Mm-hmm. Did you get a sense they knew what they wanted to do?
I got a sense they knew what our problems were. But you know what? I didn't get a sense of a certain resolute set of actions that were going to happen.
There were a horde of list of actions they intended to take.
Resolute.
Including revolutionizing agriculture and all of those.
How many years have you heard that? What does it mean to revolutionize agriculture? Okay, more than 10 years ago, we did some research in agric.
So how come you heard the complaints, but you didn't hear those things he listed?
Hear resolute.
Okay.
Actions that were going to be taken. Look, I go back to Afenyo-Markin, and I'm saying, look, I'm hopeful. Ghanaians believe this government can deliver, and I think they don't have an excuse. They can deliver. But this is what I'm looking for. By now, certain things that this will happen, that will happen. I'm not getting that. But I'm going to continue to keep my hope alive and see what action will be taken. We have the 120 days to look at. But I'm telling you, we know our problems. The solutions are not going to be easy. And we need to see some real resolute decision-making and forward-moving action.
They have inherited an economy that is unable to pay its debts. That's been shut from the, borrowing market, so to speak. They can't go out and borrow. The problem is really huge.
Yes, it is.
What sort of speed and resoluteness were you expecting in the circumstance?
So first, stop the bleeding. The economy is bad, and I don't agree with the NPP people who are trying to spin the fact that we had a great economy. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? Look, we all had hopes, all right? But the previous government, and you know my position there, I'm fine with the candidate. The government was a mess. Blew up our whole financial system. Old people are dead, and their investments are stuck. Stop spinning this business of the economy is great. It's not great. Now, the new government has come in, and they need to do certain things. When you have this kind of situation, I see too many promises. And I don't see too much in terms of cost cutting. All right? And you're hearing soft things. Take free SHS. We don't know what they want to do now. Are you going to do it or not do it? And
are you not hearing cost cutting in ministers, in government employment at the presidency? Are you not hearing cost cutting? Are you not hearing cost cutting at the celebration of the Independence Day?
Well,
20 million budget. We spent 1.5 to do that.
I heard you talk about it. That's sensible, like you said. But you said, you made a point. You said, that money that was saved should be put to some chips compound in your village. That's not what will happen. That is not what will happen.
You said agrobesoa nifrianopa.
Yes.
So are there not signs that agrobeso?
I use the word resolute. You see, I am saying we have hope that it will work. And there is no reason why it should not work. There is so much goodwill that this government can do so many difficult things and it will get a pass. So I'm simply saying use the goodwill. Okay? Take the people along, explain the situation, okay, and then do the things that you need to do. You have 2 years, all right? And I am hoping that really we will get to that point. So I'm still hopeful, but we'll see.
Now, Prof, I wanted to do something, but I have changed my mind. I wanted to hear around before I come to you, but maybe you will help us. Because Kofi said, this kind of free-for-all sort of engagement, is that really what the, dialogue is? Because I understand 6 thematic areas, yes, help us understand the process.
Okay. I think we look at the situation presented and we decided that if we have 6 thematic areas, that will capture all our problems. So we have the 6 thematic areas and all the problems have been discussed under the thematic areas. And so, recommendations were approved.
Which are these areas?
Restoring macroeconomic stability, growth with depth, and the depth seemed to be an acronym that is talking about diversification of the economy, exports and expansion, productivity across board, infusing technology into our business processes and governance, and also focusing on human capital development. So that is about growth and with depth. Then we have private sector-led growth, where the private sector will want to be truly participant in the economic delivery of the country, infrastructure delivery, and then establishment of businesses, etc., helping government to raise the needed revenue, creating the growth momentum of the economy and employing people. Then the private sector also had some challenges. For example, if you take PPP as a unique example, PPP was promulgated into law in 2020 with the aim of galvanizing and engineering a new phase of financing infrastructure and the rest. But there are some limitations that the private sector think that we have to work on to allow them to operate efficiently in that phase. Then we also look at structural reforms and policy reforms. It is under the structural reforms that we see highlighted very much the issues about the electricity and the energy sector, and also the cocoa sector. Then finally, we look at where my brother as president operated. That is restoring good governance and combating corruption. So these are the 6 thematic areas, and we will all appreciate that if we calibrate the problems of the country, they all fit into all these 6 thematic areas. So that was a...
Kofi Bento wants to know, what is it that anybody came to this platform and spoke about that we are already not aware of?
Well, even if we are aware of, it gives more agency to resolve the problem. So that is it. And all these problems that we're talking about, they didn't start today. They have been with us. If you talk about energy, they have been with us. If you talk about the cocoa sector, it didn't start just 2 years ago. They have been with us. But we are not bold to face the situation and resolve them. And that is the difference. That happened during the dialogue. So there is some kind of willingness to confront the problems. That is the difference. And it does not mean that the government is not aware of some of these problems. It does not also mean that the government is not aware of some other solutions to the problem.
Is there anything?
But the government made a commitment that within 120 days, I will subject the challenges of the economy for a consensus building so that all of us will think alike.
Is there anything the government would have missed but for this process?
Yes, the consensus. You see, you put up a policy framework, you went to election, you won the election, but you are aware that there are other people within the economy, other political parties. We are divided along political lines. So why can't I bring the people together? These are the challenges I've identified. These are some other solutions. How can we shape it to build a consensus and going forward? That is what we have done. Nigeria has done it before.
I don't hear you convince. I don't hear you convince Kofi Bento yet. Over the week, I had the opportunity to meet with some people, entrepreneurs, finance and economic people who are excited about this process. But Kofi is asking, I mean, to what end really? If they are the new things that we are regurgitating and the government would have known these matters already, so what's the point?
I don't think that I need to answer to satisfy him. The point is, the party went to the election with a set of policies. The party also promised that I will subject myself to allow for a consensus building around the issues that are confronting us. And the party has just done that. So
and you sincerely believe there's a certain advantage. There's a certain advantage in resolving our economic problems that this dialogue brings?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. And I talk about consensus, buy-in, cross-fertilization of ideas. Some of the issues that you want to do, during the engagement, you could see that there's some polishing of the ideas. That's the beauty of it.
Were you as organizers unhappy that the NPP as a party, was not interested in participating?
Well, what we were looking at is to organize an inclusive engagement. And we believe that all the parties that we have invited, all the practitioners we have invited, the private sector players and the rest that we have invited, provided us with that solid, inclusive discussion.
Nothing is missing by their absence.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
Kofi, are you still in that place that this is free-for-all process that sort of not properly, as it were, organized? And what do you also say about the NPP's, decision?
And the NPP's decision is political, right? And to that, I'm saying that because I don't want to say it's good or bad. I mean, you lost that election terribly, all right? And the guys who won say they can run the country, let them run it. Think about yourself, it's political. But in a sense, it's not statesman-like, All right. So sometimes you just go and sit there and watch them. So to that extent, let's not discuss them. I'm still not convinced. Let me tell you something. There are things that affect our macroeconomic arrangement. He knows it. Debt and revenue. I didn't hear any serious thing about debt and revenue. There are things that, even concerning that area, may be motive, like e-levy. What concrete thing is happening with it? Okay. They were arguing about whether the past government left money to pay the debt DDP or not. You know, I can't tell. Look, he's an economist. I'm just a simple consultant. I can't see our way 18 months from here concerning debt and revenue. There are things that affect Ghanaians every day: water, health, education, energy, transport, and telecommunications. All right? Nothing I heard about water. Health, the big issue is NHIS.
Well, first, I'm not sure you had the opportunity to follow through.
Of course.
Particularly,
this is me. You asked me.
The working sessions.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Of course, I couldn't have followed all of it. So I'm saying, you see, like I'm saying, this government has massive goodwill. Take the people along. I can go into all kinds of esoteric areas. I'm just dealing with the things that everybody understands. Take NHIS. Ghana's NHIS is one of the most generous in the whole world. And given the structure of funding it through that VAT, if we can manage the collection and stop the waste, instead of putting it to health, they are building things and then using it in IT things and whatever it is, and it's not working well. I didn't see anything. That affects everybody who has that card. Education, a lot has been said about free SHS. Today, we don't know where it is going. Okay, so I'm saying, look, all the talk is fine.
There's a separate conference that's going on about free SHS.
Fine, thank you. You see, you are saying...
Not free SHS, the education
We just
system.
had a massive economic forum. The biggest, all right? You put all the people together. I'm saying these crucial things were not sufficiently addressed to the point where people feel like there is a certain direction.
In one of the sessions, I heard somebody like Davido Fosudote, and some of the things you are referring to, free SHS issues, he appeared to have given, what he felt were solutions that could address it. But, Prof, do you hear Kofi? What do you have to say to him again? Because he's not hearing. He's not impressed. There are many out there who are watching us right now who will join Kofi. What do you tell them? Because you organize this.
Okay. I think the education issues are under the education forum. So that is the way you need to assess it. So you cannot bring it into the National Economic Forum and use that to assess the how.
So did you have solutions that would change, like he says, NHIS? We were told about all the SOEs and the indebtedness in excess of 250 billion, is it? I mean, how are you going to resolve that? Do they get the solutions to that? We're told that we need over $700 million to be able to keep the lights on for the whole of the year, particularly for a 24-hour economy. Do they have solutions for all of that?
Yes, all those solutions were presented during the breakout sessions feedback. And if you watch critically on the news, the various presenters present on those areas. So he indicated that he couldn't have followed everything. So,
that's right.
So I think if he can go back to check, all those things were provided.
All right, Dr. Kabiru.
We provided solutions on the energy sector, provided solution in the macroeconomic, provided solution in the private sector, provided solution in governance and all the areas. So all those things have been captured. But I must also indicate that we are here to compile the detailed report that will capture the details. Those were the highlights that were presented during the session.
Right.
So we are working on the comprehensive detail.
Among the recommendations, once again, were coordination between fiscal and monetary policy operations, reviewing the foreign exchange retention regime, major tax reforms that expand the tax net, including property tax, revised VAT rates. I've heard this over and again, like Kofi Benson will say. Overhaul the PFM system, reform SOEs. I've heard this time without number. In fact, Ken Ofori-Atta has suggested soon after they came into office that the SOEs, the pegs of the CEOs and those who heads them. He was going to make sure they were going to reduce them because they were taking unconscionable amounts as their pay. I heard Dr. Stephen Amoah, who was on the show last week, criticize his own government during the period that they had to delay some of them because you had multiple heads, CEO, deputy CEO, deputy, for institutions that are making loss, and yet they were draining the state coffers. So here is a reform CSOs and enforce transparent financial reporting. There ought to be expenditure controls in public agencies, and the need to resource internal audit regime, comprehensive review of the ECG's operations, and implement necessary reforms to position it for potential private sector involvements. Well, we tried one, it went bust. You remember PDS, comprehensive review of ECG operations, okay, that I read that. Eliminate illegal mining. Well, Galamsey, while resolving inefficiencies in the cocoa value chain to boost production and sustainability, illegal mining. Return Cocoa Board to its role as agency under the Ministry of Finance, link public sector remuneration to productivity. I've heard this since I became politically aware. Accountability and efficiency, among other things. Yes, Dr. Kabiru.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning to you.
You should have been there. You were all over the place organizing press conferences.
I gave you a card.
First and foremost, I think that the intention around this whole economic dialogue is a good one. It's good in the sense that governance from participatory perspective is good and a virtue. In fact, it's one of the tenets of participatory democracy to, from time to time, bring people to discuss and arrive at a consensus on how the nation should be governed, especially pertinent issue of economic governance. It's important that you build consensus on them. So to that extent, and much more so because it was a promise they made to the good people of Ghana within the 120 days that they are going to convene a national economic dialogue to engage the good people of Ghana on the way forward. It's good. But I also side with my senior brother to the fact that when you are given a mandate to rule, you come with very clear interventions, problem solution, and then you then discuss those. You don't go and throw the whole economy to the good people of Ghana and say, let's discuss and come to a solution on how we address the issues. And that is the point that I think that the government could have, it should have been a guided dialogue where people would come with a very clear interventions to address certain problems that I didn't see.
But it was 6 areas, thematic areas.
I mean, the thematic
and
areas,
they led and explained to the people
it's
and
like telling us that let's go and decide agriculture. Let's go and discuss education. Let's go and discuss macroeconomic stability. That was the areas. But if you come to identify the problems in agriculture, these are the linkages problem, these are the value chain problems. Let's discuss them. This is our proposed solution. Determine the viability of our solutions and profile alternative solutions.
I heard the Agric minister. She was talking about the problems, the gaps, and even went to alumina, how we can produce by ourselves rather than take the raw material out and then go and buy and bring in. You know, she was talking about all of these things.
I mean, I'll come to even talk about their communique, which is like the summarized version of what we expected. Admittedly, they mentioned the fine details will be out, will be presented to the president, and probably the good people of Ghana will get to also read that. But like you said, you took the wind out of my sail. Not even one single thing you will hear from the dialogue that sounds striking new. Not even one. If we take the macroeconomic to inclusive growth, with sustainable, inclusive and sustainable growth, infrastructure, every single one of it has been tested, has been mentioned, has been profiled by previous governments. Not even one single one, except the decision now that the only new thing is that they want to revise VAT. VAT is already to revise it. Possibly the only interpretation is to increase it. That is the only possible interpretation we can give to the VAT. They even including it as part of the key things to discuss or as part of their communique. So, for instance, you are talking of coordination between fiscal and monetary policy. We've gone through that. You are talking about the fact that you want to review the forex regime. In fact, at a point in time, we had to go over black market people. We have to introduce safeguard about forex exchange. Retention policies by corporations. We've discussed all that, as a country. We are going to about reforming or overhauling the PFM Act or system to ensure that we are able to, align it with our Fiscal Responsibility Act. Even in our manifesto promises, we all promise about doing something about Fiscal Responsibility Act and capping expenditure of government in the budget. COSO reform, and even this issue of COSO, I don't know what we discussed it. State-owned enterprises problem is not even, it's several decades problem. I remember in the state-owned enterprises report, aggregate report for 2016, those institutions we are mentioning now as being in negative were the same institutions. In 2016, we complained about VRA making losses, we complained about TOR making losses, we complained about PMCC making losses, we complained about Volco making losses, and Cocoa Board. The same story. As a matter of fact, that year, we said that there was a total loss of 1.7 billion Ghana cedi. And those that made profits was about 1 billion. So there was a net loss of 791 million Ghana cedi net loss. So the same problems we are having. Today, we are discussing the same state-owned enterprises as being in debt. So, the problems of this country, if you are a student of the Ghanaian economy, you would have known the problems. The only thing we are lacking is that novel, cutting-edge solutions that will propel us to the stage that we want. We'll talk about expenditure rationalization. He has, even in academia, he has proffered some of these solutions on radio, on television, whenever he's called upon to engage the country on the way forward. So the difficulty I have with that is, could we have done without it? Considering the outcome, my answer is yes.
In my line of work, we push paper and we keep people's confidences. But let me tell you this, I've spoken to some within your party who are into business, who are actually in the finance area and economics area. And they say, what Mahama is doing is what you missed, Asin Akufo-Addo missed, by not bringing the people on board. And that what he's doing, he's going to get a lot of credit and goodwill, which also helps the economy itself, even the optics.
Council, the problem with that, we had Senchi. It's not different from the economic dialogue. But what did the Ghanaian people face? I agree that there are some people who would love to have been part of the whole discussion and government bring him in to be part of the table. There is also a particular president who believes that, look, the Ghanaian people have elected you to solve problems. If you did not have the solution to it, we don't know it all. That is a fact. But if the people have entrusted you and believe that your solution, the manifesto you presented to them was a good one, and they voted you, go ahead and implement the manifesto. You may get certain things wrong, but that is why you have the institution of parliament. That is why you have the oversight rule parliament we support, and that is the people representatives. Okay, so people may look at the optics of it and say that Mr. Mahama is getting goodwill because he's bringing, but this is not the first time Mr. Mahama is bringing people together to discuss the national economy. We've had Senchi, but Senchi did not deliver the good that we wanted. Okay, we had Senchi, and Senchi fed into the homegrown policy, and the homegrown policy was what was fed into the IMF program, but the IMF program has been implemented, but we are back to the same point. We had the PCPEC program.
They argue that the IMF program, which was formulated on the Senchi report, is what kept the economy in the first term of the MPP administration that you like to project to the world that you did a good job. Akufo-Addo repeatedly tells the world about how he did well, particularly in the first 2 years.
Granted that was what fed in. I'm saying that the government also has some consultation that fed into the IMF program, the extended credit for the PCPEC. It was an engagement with industry players, stakeholders, CEOs. That doesn't suggest that the government was not engaged. The PCPEC was a collaborative document. So
there's nothing wrong with this?
There's nothing new that, people may differ in the approach, that you bring people to the whole of Ghana to one conference room. Some people will want to do it in terms of group meeting the academia, going to meet the traders, going to meet. The approach may differ. But let's not create a sense that this is the only time a government is engaging the good people of Ghana in terms of drafting an economic policy. And I give an example. The most recent is the PCPEC program. So anyone's wanting to suggest that Mr. Mahaman's approach, people might have had problem with the approach of Nana Akufo-Addo because there are certain things they believe that bring it to the Ghanaian people. Let's discuss, for instance, e-levy. I sincerely feel that the Ghanaian people thought they did not have a deliberative and comprehensive discussion and consensus building on it, and it was implemented. There are some pockets of intervention that we can disagree on, but on the economy at large, or the whole economy, I don't think that what was done in terms of the National Economic Forum was totally different from what was done in generating the PCPEC program. Okay. But in any case...
Even on Galamsey, I think the NPP regime held, stakeholders meeting, brought Asante and everybody to try and get ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, what did you want to say?
Yeah.
And I'm going to Dr. Arthur Kennedy shortly.
Yeah, you were talking about guided dialogue. I think that was exactly what we did. So we made the chairpersons and the presenters of each thematic area. We presented to them what were the issues that should drive the discussion. So that was exactly what they did, and that brought about the recommendations that came by.
Okay.
And I got the impression that Dr. Kabiru is saying that they were not able to solve the problems that we are talking about now. That is why the same problems are being highlighted. And the difference now is that there is a commitment to ensure that those problems are confronted and dealt with.
Thank you very much. Now, let's go to Dr. Arthur Kennedy. And it's a difficult game for the NDC, is it not? Because it's seeking to scrap all sorts of taxes. E-levy is going, covert tax is going. That alone, you're going to lose as much as about 8 billion, cedis in revenue. Betting tax will go. And you're telling us the economy is in intensive, care. How are you going to do this? Dr. Arthur Kennedy, let's check if you are also as positive like the other, elder statesmen who were part of this process and have been saying this is good, except sometimes we are familiar with this path. Implementation, it's always our problem.
Yes. Happy Independence Day to all Ghanaians. They say that we celebrate our and if we haven't achieved much in life. So we should celebrate Independence Day. But I think it's an interesting conversation. Our problem, Samson, is that we refuse to call things by their proper names. Kofi Bento makes an excellent, impassioned case about whether anything is new and all that, and then he falls into the same trap by saying that the vice president, who was the economic guru for the government that abysmally failed, was a great candidate. I mean, that is part of our refusal to call things by their proper names. I am reminded of the story of a guy who got married and after some time, nothing was happening and the elders called him and they said, "Where are the children?" He said, "I'm talking to my wife." And the old man said, "Man, there is a way of producing children. You can't produce children by just talking to your wife. There are things you need to do." I think we've heard a lot of these things, and I'm glad that it was brought up.
The vice president didn't call the shots. He was not the president.
Yeah, but he was the vice president who was brought in because he had economic news. The president said, "I'm on board because he's an economic genius." So at the end of the day, you can't tell us that the economy failed and you knew nothing about it. You were only there blanket. But let me go on.
But we understand, for example, the vice president was against e-levy, but the government went ahead to implement it. What could he do?
Well, and what could he do? Have you ever heard of Ujinja Odinga, who resigned as vice president of Kenya because he disagreed with the direction of the governance? And to get back on strike,
okay,
you realize Donald Trump has been in office for less than John Mahama has been in office. But it seems like he's been there. Every day, he's raining actions, good and bad, on the people. Governance is about doing. And my point was that the Senche engagement and the report, I went back and read it. It sounds very, very similar to the National Economic Dialogue. And part of it is that a lot of the players are the same. They are the same people who have been saying the same things. The problem with Ghana is that we don't want to do things. We kind of tinker around the edges of problems. And the spokesperson for the NDC says, oh, the details are coming. Yes, but the highlights tell us your priorities.
On this platform, if I may clarify this before I forget, Professor John Gachi is not here speaking for NDC. He was part of the organizers of the forum.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
The organizer of the forum says the details are there, and a lot of these things people are saying are in the details. It's true. But the communique highlights your priorities. So if something is important enough, it will be in your communique. There was nothing about fighting corruption. I think fighting corruption is an indispensable pillar to turning our economy around. So even if you were listing 3 things, it should have been there in blazing headlines. I haven't even talked about the action. I never heard any discussion about the role of the diaspora. For over the last decade, they've been sending every year more money than we get in foreign direct investments. And we didn't discuss the role of the diaspora in our economy. There was nothing on moral enforcement of the country, because most of our problems are moral. The difference between right and wrong, principle, calling things as they are. They are talking about increasing revenue. Every year, Parliament gets people to line up to ask for tax annulment and tax forgiveness. Every year they do that, even while officially we are saying we are not raising enough revenue. How are you going to raise enough revenue when every year you are forgiving taxes? And there are state-owned enterprises. I can tell you, in 2000, one of the first detailed conversations I had with Boache Jakons on state-owned enterprises, the World Bank had prepared a report on Ghana's state-owned enterprises with solutions. That was a quarter of a century ago. And we're still talking about them. We need to understand that governance is about doing things. And the good professor talked about, there's going to be another dialogue on education, how many dialogues are we going to have? I am hopeful, but frankly, I am getting less and less optimistic by the day. We need to start doing things. What are we going to do about corruption? Without solving corruption, nothing else will work. What are we going to do to bring the diaspora to the table? If we don't do that, then they will lose interest in our development. And I tell you, from where the diaspora come, there are more people behind them, our children, who will give us 50 and 60 years of commitment going to second and third generations if we do things right. What are we going to do? For example, when was the last time a president fired a cabinet minister for corruption? When was the last time Parliament refused to pass the budget for a ministry because auditing showed that there was malfeasance? Why is it that we talk about state-owned enterprises and President Mahama, unfortunately, has already set the predicate for the state-owned enterprises continuing to fail? Because we have appointed people to them based solely on cronyism without reforming their boards and bringing transparency and other things that would be the foundations of turning them around. And as for privatization of ECG, that people think is a solution. Here in North America, most electricity companies are not privatized because most states think that things like electricity and health and other things might be too important to subject to the tender mercies of profiteering or profit and losses. So that is not a panacea to all problems.
So you're seeing the president being slow compared to, as it is, Donald Trump, and in action almost every day, and like you said, good and bad, because some of the things he's doing, he himself is beginning to reverse some of them because they are biting. Listen to the MPs, just a couple of them, and tell me if the president is not, in fact, signaling correctly, because it does appear there's a groundswell of the society that suggests that the president is doing right.
Mr. Speaker, it is only under this government that when Bawumia digitalizes in Samanfo, Eji Kronufa, you digitalize to bring forth ghosts at national service. That is what your digitalization is about. Mr. Speaker, Bawumia Bako in Samanfo Bebre. Mr. Speaker, we live in a country where after 8 years, some people cannot show us a completed functioning hospital. All they have are uncompleted projects and at various stages of completion. We have been hearing various stages of completions till 2017. When are you going to complete them? Of course, Bawumia Bako uncompleted projects be brave. But Mr. Speaker, when you leave an economy that is struggling to pay its debts, you want us to invite you to a banquet? An economy where your debt strategy was to borrow recklessly, default in payment, and declare bankruptcy. Do you want the president to come smiling when he's delivering this gloomy picture that you have given him? If that amounts to lamentation, then so be it. Reckless to the point of finding it difficult to understand. And when you decide to put a stop to their recklessness, they call you a terminator. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately for them, the man who inherited their mess is a ruthless terminator. Mr. Speaker, John Mahama is a terminator of ghosts at NSA. I remember you were the information minister when you were trying to educate me on what is called samurai bond, panda bond, century bond. Mr. Speaker, these are the people. They were experts in bonds. When you ask Kojo, he said, oh, this is samurai bond, it is in Japan. They knew every corner where they were giving loans. Panda bond. Kojo, are they still giving the panda bonds? They said something was called century.
Three major things that I want to draw the government bench's attention to. Number one, stop the propaganda. You have won the election already. You don't need to do more propaganda. The propaganda will not create jobs. It won't put food on the tables of people. It won't put clothes on the backs of people. Rather, bring your governance programs. Till date, we don't have a single definition for the 24-hour economy program. Everybody you talk to has a different definition. Program Bako, definition Bebre. Program Bako, definition Bebre. Spend time doing less propaganda and more time bringing your governance programs so that Parliament can assist you and work on it.
Look at our public debts. They inherited a public debt of 120 billion Ghana cedis. And I remember distinctly that President Akufo-Addo stood to your right in this house and declared that the 120 billion Ghana cedi debt was unheard of. At the last reckoning, Mr. Speaker, our public debt stood at 721 billion Ghana cedis. Even then, Mr. Speaker, it was because they denied 1.3 million Ghanaian bondholders of the rights to earnings on their bonds. Mr. Speaker, the domestic debt exchange program, as Mr. President rightly noted, is the harshest economic policy in the history of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, these indices point to one fact, that the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration have been the worst managers of our economy by far and away. And there can be no dispute about it. Ghanaians have lived through the worst economic crisis in a generation. Ghanaians have lived through the worst economic crisis under the Fourth Republic, if not in the entire history of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, since the year 2020, or immediately after the elections of that year, the Ghanaian economy has been in a tailspin. For the first time in decades, a Ghanaian government defaulted on debt payment. When President Mahama was leaving power in January 2017, Ghana could fulfill its debt obligations. At a point, our debt to GDP ratio under the MPP leapfrogged to 104%. It meant that if theoretically we were to pick all of our GDP and pay our debt with it, we will still require another 4% to do so. It is the worst in our history under the Fourth Republic. Mr. Speaker, the budget deficit is the greatest indicator of economic prudence, because the fundamental principle of economic management is that you cannot live beyond your means. Even President Mahama stated boldly that in the event that he was elected, he will work with 60 ministers. This compelled our colleagues on the other side to immediately promise to work with 50 ministers. Mr. Speaker, these are the same people who defended to the hilt the appointment of 125 ministers. Mr. Speaker, it will interest you to note that the worst economic outcomes that this country has seen emanated from their performance between 2017 and 2020. After that point, all they did was to try to patch up for the wrongs of 2020. That terrible economic performance was brought about by the biggest government in our history of 125 ministers. That means that you don't need a legion of ministers to be able to manage the country properly. Now, Mr. Speaker, I use myself as an example of the savings that are going to be made by having a reduced government. My colleague on the other side, and my friend, Honorable Oponkuma, who, by the way, is my constituent also, used to head a ministry called the Ministry of Information. Mr. Speaker, that ministry had 76 people working there to manage government information. Mr. Speaker, as I speak to you, it is myself, a deputy, and 5 other people who now manage government information. Mr. Speaker, if you move from 125 ministers to 60 ministers, Mr. Speaker, that means that you are going to buy 60 less Land Cruisers.
Forgive us, we're looking for a specific sound, but we had to go round about it. Forgive us about that. Dr. Atta Kennedy, people are talking about cutting down on the cost of government and so on, and that the signals are showing, including just how the 68th Independence Day celebration was observed.
I mean, those are valid points. And I think that is why I say that I am hopeful. But more needs to be done. You know, I think that talking about the election being over, the president's information person sounds like he was really litigating the campaign a little bit. The campaign is over. I think at this stage we should be doing accountability and executing. You know, all these people, you know, I saw these charts about Bank of Ghana building with estimates that have tripled. Nobody is asking questions. We're talking about banking reforms that led to closure of some banks. We need accountability. Accountability as in putting people in the dock to answer questions. Why was this done? Why was that done? And at the end of the day, we must punish some people. It sounds like, I mean, we like your Gary, but we don't want to see the making of Gary. You know, we need to do things. And I wish the president well, but I have a fear that in the end, we're going to do a lot of talking and find out in 4 years that most of the people who ran the country into the ground were never asked to account for their misdeeds. Okay. And that will really be sad because it will just signal to future leaders that they can do the same thing. And I can tell you, sadly, that in 4 years' time, we're going to find out that this kind of corruption and others we are decrying, some of them are happening even from members of ORA, you know, and that is unfortunate. My counsel to the president is that talk is good. He talks well. His speech at the National Economic Dialogue was very good. It was heartfelt, but a president's legacy is based on things he does, not just on things he says. He needs to do things. Okay. And by the way, you look at how they are talking about the National Economic Dialogue. The government says our coffers are empty, but they are offering salary increases. You know, so if our coffers are empty and we are offering salary increases, how are we going to end up funding those salary increases? So these things have become very familiar, you know, complaining about state-owned enterprises and funding them, you know, but the same things that we complain about, we just wait for a decent interval and we go back and do them. Those people who spoke at the National Economic Dialogue were very good people. I've read K.Y. Amwakun's book about his autobiography, very good book.
He's been on this for a very long time.
Absolutely. But the problem with the elder statesmen and others is that they get to a point where they don't want to offend anybody, you know. So we should listen to them sometimes, but I'm just saying you can't make omelets without breaking eggs. And I think that we need to be breaking eggs.
Okay. Thank you very much. Dr. Tony Edu joins us for a brief intervention. Doc, thanks for joining us. Please, let's hear you.
Hello.
Yes, Doc.
Good morning, Samson.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you clearly. Please go on.
Okay. Ghana for Yapekasao. Chokrodo. You get up in the morning and talk, and no action. My point of departure is Dr. Arthur Kennedy's observation about our SOEs. Ghana Airways and Ethiopian Airlines started the same year. Ethiopian Airlines have hundreds of planes in flight. Ghana Airways is dead. Why? Like Arthur Kennedy said, we don't employ the expertise to manage our SOEs. We don't encourage our graduates, after they've done their national service at the ministries, they are thrown back to the streets. But these are the enthusiastic future. I'll give you my personal experience. I took graduates doing their national service to build the monitoring and evaluation system at a very minimal cost. I used the same team to build an online visa and passport application and approval system in The Hague, and I was sent to The Hague. The total cost was 12,000 euros. When I left, it's been thrown off and is gone for 450,000 contracts to a company called VMH Global. That is how we manage our state assets. Osagifo Kwame Nkrumah, his vision was to irrigate the whole of the Accra Plain and turn it into large-scale agriculture. In 2009, President Mahama, then Vice President Mahama, supported a paper I presented to Professor Mills at a cabinet retreat. I call it Peri-Urban Agricultural Homestead. Take a look Accra is overcrowded, overpopulated, food prices are very high. Farming close to Accra reduces food prices. Definitely. That is simple economics. The people who will do it are those you see on the railway line carrying 10 tubers of yam on one arm. Strong, virile people. And yet, they said there was no land. The government has the executive power to take land and give it to private people years later to create conquer castles. But you cannot have the same executive power to build large-scale mechanized agriculture, harboring artisanal people who can build their own house, dormitories, live in there. Why? What is wrong with us? Why do we talk Roman? We don't act. What is wrong?
Okay. So you want us? It's a call to action. That's what we should do rather than talking.
They are low-hanging fruits. Pick them.
All right. Okay. Thanks for the points made. Thank you very much, Dr. Tony Edu. And let me come back here quickly before we take a break and return to the next issues. And the next issues, Dr. Atta Kennedy will begin with us on the two of them as quickly as he will make his points, and then because he has to take leave of us at a certain point. So now, listening around and returning, when the matter of the SOEs was spoken about, we heard the man who was in charge previously tell us about how selective, and this is particular or familiar with new governments. They pick part of it where there is some bleeding, then they talk about, but they don't talk about everything. We have been told about the profits that were being made in the other SOEs, so that we have 53 SOEs, 39 reported profits in 2023. And yet we pick out the number that have the heaviest debts and are running in the red to talk to the nation about. Is that a fair way to do it? Are we going to get solutions if we continue to do things this way? Joseph Kujo, the former Minister for Public Enterprises, had to come out to share, the contrary facts. Yes, okay. Yes.
Yeah. Before I get to that, I want to emphasize that the president has promised 120 days a social contract.
He's done 60 days.
Yeah, that is the reason why we are doing the dialogue within the 120 days. And this engagement will not continue forever. So those calling for action, the action will follow very soon. The SOEs, my understanding is that we are talking about those SOEs which are very sensitive to the Ghanaian economy. Take ECG, for example, very sensitive. Take the others like Cocoa Board, very sensitive. So you cannot leave these sensitive SOEs which are bleeding with the issues of procurement, finances, and focus on their core areas as a problem, and you cannot highlight them. And that is why it is very important to highlight them. Take ECG, for example. If ECG is not operating efficiently, we all know the problem that we are going to be facing. So that is the reason. So I'm not sure it's because of one wants to achieve some political end. That is the reason why those ones were selected.
Okay. All right. Yes, Kofi.
But I also want to agree with Dr. Atta Kennedy that diasporan issues are very important. They do.
You're agreeing to an omission.
Yeah,
that ought not have happened. There was an omission there.
They are the one that deal with a lot of remittances, and we know what remittances do to our country. And
you are stating as a matter of fact that you must have dealt with tourism and the other areas.
We discuss remittances.
Okay.
But he wants us to highlight
diaspora.
And I agree with him that we need to highlight the diaspora. Because the remittances that we discussed, they were the one behind it.
I represented a group of the people in the diaspora to go on the Ropal case.
So it's important that
who can be registered where they live and vote from where they are. And I discovered, that was the time I was doing that case, that I discovered that for 2 times their remittances far exceeded what we were able to collect locally. I was shocked.
So that is the spirit within which I'm saying that it's an area that we need to deal with very well.
Again on this, you represented them.
Yeah.
Ropal. We pretend we can't do it. Look at the number of things we've been doing.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm saying, look, when it comes to Ropal, if you elect me today, I will make the point straight. In 6 months, register Ghanaians and they can vote.
The judgment has been sitting there. The EC kept giving excuses. We cited them for contempt a number of times. They had to do whatever they had to do. But you know why? It will not be implemented because the parties have their own issues. Some suggest maybe have more people in the diaspora than the other party.
Be holding the country back?
Anyway.
Yeah, so let me conclude. It is not true that corruption issues were not dealt with. If you're talking corruption, we are talking about procurement, we are talking about anti-corruption institutions, we are talking about conflict of interest, disclosure of assets. All those things were discussed and they provided some kind of recommendations. So it is not true that corruption issues were not.
That was a major plank in the Imani presentation as well. Yes, Kofi, your final comments around this matter.
See, let me go to the SOE matter. Again, my worry is that we dance around issues in this country. Samson, from a fundamental point of view, we don't need to have SOEs. Let me explain.
We have as many as 170 plus of them on our books that we have set up.
When a nation starts at the time Kwame Nkrumah started, you don't even have people to run institutions. So we had white people, and you phase them out. That's part of the reason why you create SOEs, to do things that the private sector cannot do. After 68 years, none of what the SOEs are doing is not possible from the private sector. Let me give you one example. We spend millions of dollars supporting STC. All right? They have a managing director, HR manager, personnel, whatever. There are people who wear suits to office every day. They have been given millions of dollars worth of state resources to run a transport service. Just less than a kilometer away, you have VIP and OA, with all due respect to those guys who I respect. School dropouts, some have never been to school. They don't wear suit to office. They have more buses, they run more, they do everything better.
There are fewer staff. Actually, STC is trying to compete. It's trying to, because they are being beaten in the competition, you see what they do? They take some of their buses to those stations.
SOEs
so I'm making a point, let me finish.
Very important in the
I disagree with you, so let me make my point. See, to the extent that you have an SOE, which is a net drain on the economy, if that SOE did not exist, we would not lose that money. And look, people say, oh, employment, they should get it. Those people who are employed there are part of the problem. This is why we end up with DDEP, debts we can't pay, and then the government loads it on you. We end up with high exchange rates because the CD is falling. Because we are just, look, by my calculation, we lost $15 billion in SOEs. So look, what's the point? As simple as this. You have SOEs, when we appoint management and board members, they don't see it as a task. They see it as a reward. They are making losses. Every board member gets a vehicle. Management gets 2-3 vehicles. Why can't you simply say, every SOE has 2 years. 2 years. You can do it within the term of this government. And in 2 years, if you are not making profit, you are on your own. In other words, you can die slowly. All right? Because, Samson, I'm not a wicked guy. I'm simply saying, it does not make sense to go and collect taxes from hard-working guys on the sun and use it to go and pay suit-wearing people to go and sit in offices, make losses, and use that money to buy V8 and run around.
Who have
and
staff,
declare them as lost.
Suit-wearing officers who have staff who are just watching television throughout the day, and you go there, they don't even pay attention to you. Yes, but some of the state-owned enterprises, they've done good job.
Exactly.
You see some of them, yes.
So I'm saying those who are making losses, that's why I'm starting.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Dr. Kabiru,
those
yes.
So
Dr. Kabiru.
on this, I'll just say that, like, I reiterate my point that consultation is good, but when it doesn't yield anything, just another expenditure on the public coffers. And that this consultation, we hope it will yield something. Again, it's not the first time that is happening. And if I forgot to mention that even the Minister of Finance instituted what they call quarterly economic roundtable with the academia, where every quarter they engage with the. So it is ongoing, and it has to be. The most important thing is the outcome. Does it commensurate? At the end of the tenure, Mr. Mahmoud would say that I promised 120 days that I was going to hold economic dialogue, and I delivered. Yeah. Why end? So that is ticking
the boxes.
Yeah, just ticking the boxes, and that is something we should run away from. And then talking about SOEs, my point is that when a government or the state is diversifying in the portfolio of investment that it engages in, it is only fair and balanced for you to give the net outturn, the net profitability or net loss of your state-owned institution. But if you go and pick ECG, pick VRA, pick Cocoa Board, and make a case, when in actual case, the state may be making profit as a result of if you put all the 100 state-owned enterprises together. So sometimes, to give the good picture, let the Ghanaian people know that, okay, A, B, C, D are doing well, A, B, C, D are not doing well, and then the Ghanaian people can go along with you in the narrative. Without that, it will engage in this cyclical politicking, where people will think that, look, let me bastardize the previous government. And there's one thing, and in the coming days, from Tuesday, it may come up, because how we begin to treat certain, for instance, Cocoa Board, he mentioned that they made artificial profit.
Yeah.
And that is feeding into a narrative the finance minister wants to create. Now, they would probably come to our deficit and say that our deficit is not as reported, because they will go and take contingent liabilities and put it as part of the fiscals. And that convenient accounting doesn't help in the national discourse. I just hope that because it's giving us an indication that this is what is coming. And I just hope that he will hold the brake, and don't go to creating sense of artificial fiscal deficit, when actually arrears, there's a simple definition of arrears, and as an accountant he will understand what arrears mean and what is being fed into the fiscal deficit calculation.
Let me share some of the messages that our viewers and listeners have been sending to us, and then we take a break and return to the issue of a few good men in their corruption fight, and the Office of Special Prosecutor. The Special Prosecutor himself and his staff are risking their lives. They are being chased. They are targets for people who want to actually kill them, according to the Special Prosecutor. Well, this is coming from a corporate leader in this country with many years of stellar performance running one of the most profitable businesses. It says SNIT has 18 billion cedis under management with more than 1,000 workers. Two pension fund managers have 14 billion cedis each under management with approximately 41 workers each. Food for thought. Good morning. Right, thank you very much for sending in that one. And this one from Excelini Reigns says, a good leader will always go in for broader dialogue with other people joining hands. Everyone is involved, and together we can build a strong economy. Eddie Quaynor says, Kofi Bento doesn't place a value on groupthink. I find his objection to Economic Dialogue Forum so alarming and intellectually flawed. This is a wrong argument to make. What's wrong with bringing different perspectives to our economic challenges? Nene Aiku says, Kofi Bento and folks who do not see the need for the national economic dialogue are in the micro minority. The damage done to this economy the past 8 years is enormous, and we needed that consensus on where we want to go and what we should do from here. As for what damage has been done, Kofi acknowledges that and says it in terms that you may not be able to say, right? Mauli Atachi says this would surely germinate some good and solid economic policies and plans for the coming year. If the last 1 year by this same government is anything to go by, at this point, it can't be a party plan as usual. The many ideas on the table are the way to go for quicker recovery. Daniel Asari says, like Kofi Bentil said, we know all the problems and even the solutions. The problem has always been the indecisiveness of tackling the problems devoid of partisanship. The optics are just too much. Man Farid says the problems are known before the elections. Solutions are written in lengthy manifestos amid fanfares, yet politicians will have dialogue in plush hotels for days to discuss the same problems they had solutions before the elections. Sir Ben says politics is supposed to bring development and personal growth to the citizens. However, due to the parochial interest of political activities, it is rather retrogressing Africa due to the requisite laws to enforce, due to lack of requisite laws to enforce the continuation of the project started by the respective previous governments. Gasma says, let Dr. Tia and Mr. Kofi Bentil know the Pharisees believed in what they thought was right until they met Jesus. The national dialogue was good in terms of social mobilization. Could new things have emerged? Yes. If it didn't, there's something wrong with validating what was already known. Yes. So many of your messages. I just want to try and read just about 2 more, then we go. This one says, Ken says, does good governance require meeting of diverse minds for efficiency? Meeting of Ghanaian minds so that together we all own the challenges and be prepared to make the needed sacrifices for a better future. Nothing wrong with the NDC inviting all minds for a dialogue that has a potential to benefit all. Inclusiveness is good, he says. Then Kweku says to tell Kofi Bentil that maybe you want to wait for the budget to know whether or not this yielded what you expect, because the budget will be read out and the issues will take center stage in the budget. Yakubu Ibn Chambers, once again, your message is long, but let me see. Indeed, the truth doesn't care about the feelings of those perpetuating the destruction of Ghana. For the rest to happen in Ghana, some emboldened individuals must defy the odds to unlock the dark codes towards emancipation from corruption, illegal mining, stealing, and killings. We must stop believing the fairy tales of development and wake up from our delusions. Nothing works in this country called Ghana except for the mass rush for the new resources at our disposal. Take, for example, the debate on Ghana's primary balance and the drama put out there by the politicians. Who is telling the truth? So a country of 30 million, including academics, cannot take a visceral assessment of the true state of the economy. The journey is long for Ghana. Yakubu Ibn Chambers, thanks for your message. And I've got many of you who have also sent similar messages as well. But thank you very much. We'll take a break here and we'll return. We'll look at the land looting issue and the president's order for a reversal of the looting of the foreign affairs lands, and also the special prosecutor. This time, probably still talking about the Ankonam situation, but asking us to confirm if we really want to go on and fight corruption. You need this wisdom all the time on your show. This truth and wisdom spoken raw. Men like Arthur Kennedy should always be on your show. Thank you from Ernest. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And we're joined by Dr. Thomas Anaba. Dr. Professor Gachi has taken leave of us. Dr. Arthur Kennedy too needed to, take a break because he has a flight to catch. Well, now let's talk about matters of corruption and also President Mahama issuing some directives. And the directives are specific to foreign affairs lands. President Mahama has directed the reversal of all allocations and sale of land belonging to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs by the previous government. He says there should be an immediate reversal of such sales. The directive ensures that the ministry's lands at airport residential area claimed by 7 organizations and individuals will now be cancelled and preserved for the people of Ghana, according to Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. He also says, under my watch as Foreign Affairs Minister, no land or property of the ministry located either home or abroad will be sold. So, Kofi, how do you process that?
I think we are making a mess of the management of state assets, and we're actually breaking the law in the process. We have evolved all kinds of conventions which are not rooted in law. And essentially, these conventions have been designed to facilitate looting by various governments and their cronies. That is why you see people allocate lands, state lands, and all those other things, including cars. Okay, now, let me disclose this. So I am working on a case which hopefully I'll bring in. I invite anybody. Nowadays we are slow, so the younger men can take it up. See, for instance, when it comes to state vehicles, the chief of staff will write a letter and grant more or less, what they call waiver or something. There's a name they call it, for the car to be sold to somebody at, peppercorn rates. That is not lawful. The chief of staff does not have any authority to take state assets and instruct that it should be given to Samson at a peppercorn rate. The same for lands. And if you go through...
The lands are vested in the president.
The lands are vested... Lands. I'm talking about disposal.
Right.
The lands are vested in the president. And if you go from the Constitution Act 257 vesting, and if you go to Public Procurement 663, how it is, disposed of, etc., it shall be done according to the Public Procurement Act. In fact, ultimately leads to an auction. It is not lawful for anybody, including the president, in whom our assets have been vested, to write and say, give the land to this person. All right? If you say you're going to give it to Prof here or this person there, it's state land. Why should it be given to this particular person? The state should get the best benefit, the highest, level of, revenue from it. Why don't you put it out there? And if he wins, that's fine. What I'm saying simply is this. Our politicians outside law have evolved systems which allow them to loot us. And by the way, it is also in Article 296 that if you are not a judge and you are given this power, you will publish a process, a system by which you exercise that power. In other words,
the exercise of discretion.
Exercise of discretion. These things that have been going on both parties is a loot of state resources. And we have the experience that it goes to their friends and cronies. So yes, it's a good thing that President Mahama says, stop it. But we shouldn't get to this point. And I hope President Mahama will be the last person who has to deal with it, because you know what he can do in 4 years? He can have these rules published under Article 296 that nobody, not even he, the president, because he's holding it in trust, shall allocate, give, grant, waive, that any state resource, car, land, building, should be given to any other person except by these processes. And Act 663 is there. In short, if there's a determination that this asset is no longer useful or there's a reason why it must be disposed of, there's a process, and it must necessarily go to auction. Right? When Franklin discussed the stewardship model in the forum, okay, these are some of the things that go into it. There's no time to talk about it, but people must go into government knowing that you are a steward. A steward doesn't go into government trying to loot things as if he has just won a war. So I commend President Mahama. He just stopped one thing, but he can go ahead and stop more things by making sure that nobody, not the chief of staff or anybody anywhere, may allocate state property to any private person under any circumstance except by the process of law as should be promulgated under Article 296, so that everybody knows that this is how it is done. Too much of it has happened, okay, and we have ended up passing on the foreign affairs laws that we are talking about. Look at it. I mean, we could get millions from them, and we just end up with peppercorn rates, and they are bushes anyway. So it should stop. All of it should stop, not just this one.
The peppercorn rate you are talking about, they are also in the law and in the jurisprudence of land transactions. So if you check the oral oral documentation, when they mentioned the former NIB boss, his acquisition, you will find that every documentation shows that the land was properly acquired.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
The only problem they raise will be that he acquired it for, say, 160,000 Ghana cedis
instead of,
when that same land, the going price in the market will be, say, 700,000 US dollars.
Yes.
They suggested to us. But the person would have fulfilled all the legal process.
That's my point. My point is they have evolved conventions outside the law by which they allocate state properties to themselves and their cronies. Which is why I'm saying, you know, Article 296. We know public procurement. The laws are there. And I'm saying it is not lawful because this person who got the land, he may not have stolen it. It's the same case with Honorable Afenyo-Markin. He says he leases his land. But the point is, how is it that somebody sits somewhere, he gets into power today, and then tomorrow he allocates state lands to his friends? It's not right, and the law does not allow that. So I'm urging the president that because 296 is there, that one, nobody, even he, the president, who is holding it in trust, cannot allocate it to you, Samson. So if for any reason a determination is made, these are the processes by which it will be made. And if there is going to be a disposal of the asset, these are the processes. It's all in the law. And make that law hard and fast.
In this case, you can predict, Kofi Bento, as a lawyer, that these 7 institutions and individuals who got these lands, the paper trail will show that they may have gotten it clean.
Yes.
And you are going to take it back because you felt the price at which it was sold was too cheap, and perhaps that this is a new government and you don't subscribe to the policy that led to the selling of these lands. That's going to be a battle in court.
It will be a battle that I will win. You and I know about an unconscionable contract. We know about all kinds of rules, ethics, conventions, and systems where you can prove that this was not properly acquired. There are all kinds, we can discuss all of those things, but basically simply based on an unconscionable contract. If so, he has a defense that I didn't steal the land. But the state can go in and say, no, somebody did something wrong for you to get this. Even if we have to compensate you, we may have to compensate you. But taking the land back is entirely lawful and proper. And it is not enough to take this land
back.
The
one selling the land to me said it is available not only to me, but to other people at 160,000 Ghana cedis. Then a change of government comes in. And then you say, oh, this land is prime land. It could fetch us as much as 700,000 US dollars. Because of that, what should the court say?
And I'm saying,
what did me, the buyer, what did I do wrong?
You are a bona fide purchaser, okay? And that is fine, which is why I'm saying you may be entitled to compensation. But the person who is now in charge of that property, who can prove that it was given to you improperly, at the least as an unconscionable bargain, because you can't buy a Mercedes-Benz for 10 cedis. You ought to know. So I'm saying the law of it is there, okay? But this is what we must avoid. A situation where people claim to have gotten state property fair and square at peppercorn rates and therefore they own it. No, it must stop. And I'm saying the law exists. So what the president can do is not to stop this one, but to go forward and make clear to everybody that he is the president who holds the assets of this country in trust according to 257, cannot give it to his friends and whatever it is like they've done in the past because it is wrong.
Some of the
and
lands,
we know what has
including
happened.
the Parks and Garden lands that we heard about, some of them were sold, actually not in this, in the NPP government, but the previous government, NDC government. And they sold it and they gave the reason that the Parks and Gardens,
they needed tools.
They didn't have anything. You go to their offices and you see how they look like.
Yes.
So we are going to sell, make money, and use the money to put up a good edifice for you, get you cars, get you equipment. What's wrong with those?
All of those are the excuses they give for the loot. That is one. Now, we can go into it and find out whether that happened or not. However, all of that said, assuming that it is entirely true that we needed to sell that land to get Parks and Gardens, equipment and whatever it is, the law says, do not give an instruction that it should be sold to Samson. You don't have that right. It's state property. You hold it in trust. If the determination is made that we need A, B, C, and D, and we need to sell that land, there's a law that says you put it on an auction, you do A, B, C, and D, and take the highest value for it. So that whole point of...
You know how the auction can be managed.
Well, you see, that is how you build institutions. Right now, we are stage one. They are doing things which are clearly unlawful. We'll go to the auction, which is lawful. Somebody wants to game the auction. We will have a way of dealing with that one also. But let's do the right things, all right? And let me tell you, if these things are published sufficiently and everybody knows it and the auction is there, you come and you are trying to game the auction. Other people are interested. And they will work for you to make sure you can...
Even Okudzeto Blackbird's proposal, he began with a private member's bill, which we understand in this regime will become a state-sponsored bill to make a law that says politically exposed persons will not purchase state property.
I totally agree. In fact, I have an addition to that. That anybody who is politically exposed may not, when they are in office or 4 years thereafter, purchase any state properties and cannot participate in an auction because of the gaming. You know, the time here is not enough to go through all of this. But when you say they will game the auction, okay, who's going to do it? It's the politicians and their friends. So that private members bill, I've discussed it, and I haven't spoken to Okudzeto, but I would want him to add that no PEP shall participate in an auction, one. Number two, 4 years after you leave office, you may not. Okay, that's part of the stewardship we're talking about.
Okay.
Right? And of course, people say, oh, they will let their cronies go and do it. We'll deal with some of these things as we get there. But you see, we are creating a situation where people get into politics just to amass wealth and create capital. And it is bad for our country because in other places it's led to civil wars. We should stop it somewhere. If you want to amass your property and get whatever, go to the private sector, go and work.
Interesting. Okay, so let's hear Dr. Thomas Anaba on this one. He's MP for Garu and former medical director, Rich Hospital. And when I mention former medical director, Rich Hospital, it brings those memories, how things are panning out now, which happened yesterday. Same template, right? You were just hounded out like that.
Yeah.
Around the time we were defending some of the people who had suffered some of these things.
Yeah.
Yes. Will this really work? That the president gives an order that reverse all the sales, cancel all of them? How do you think it will work?
Thank you very much. I think my colleague here couldn't have handled the issue better. I think at least he has brought up some good proposals. But let me first of all thank the good people of Garu. I'm sitting here addressing me as an MP, and also wish our mothers, today is International Women's Day.
That's correct.
And then all Ghanaians, happy Independence Day. A very moderate celebration that we had 2 days ago. I think this is a very good move by the president because all previous governments have come to play lip service to some of these things. And then people see that it is very free and they can easily go in to do whatever they can to possess state property without any fear of any sort. To buy lands at prices that we all know That is not the price. That is my problem. I don't mind if government decides that I am going to dispose of this property. It goes through a very transparent process whereby we make maximum gains from it. I wouldn't be worried. But a process whereby the people going to procure are handpicked, are just selected, and they come with any price at all they want for them, it means that some of us who are lay people can just sit in a home and think that they have seen themselves behind the scenes before coming to agree onto this and to sell this. Just like in Cantonment, I have asked for a plot there just some few days ago in millions. In millions.
Yeah.
But I see Dr. Kaba, the best neurosurgeon of Ghana, was living in one of the plots. He was asked to leave within 2 weeks. And his plots were sold to people at very cheap prices, not even up to $1 million, which shows that even if the person was not politically exposed and has acquired the land, is it difficult to go to Buku from Accra, see somebody there, connive with him, let him come and buy a plot at 200 Ghana cedis, and tomorrow he gives it back to me, or go and resell it to another person and make a lot of money and then go back and share it with a politically exposed person. One other thing I would like to say about his proposal he's making is that even the politically exposed person should continue to be politically exposed till he dies. It shouldn't be 4 years. Why? Once you are politically exposed today, tell me, those who worked under Kufuor, are they not politically exposed? How many years now have they left office? They are still politically exposed. Once you know you want to go into politics, know that you have no power in future in this country to go and buy any state property, whether land or vehicle or house or whatever. Then you know that you are taking a risk to go into politics. And politics, to me, is service. Yes. It's service. You are coming to serve and clean your hands and go away and know that you work voluntarily for the country. This move by the president to make sure they reverse all these lands, good move. It is sending a signal to current appointees that you can't do it because your own appointor is telling other people to reverse an agreement that was made to sell government land to them. So if I'm doing this today, tomorrow if you attempt, the next government who would come, which is not your party, would revenge. He will ask you to also return it. And returning it, certainly will have challenges now, like he said. But I don't think in future there will be a challenge because no one would attempt again to go in to procure government property at a very dumping price, a price that even the lay person on the streets knows that that is not the price. So they'll go to court definitely if they attempt. We have to look at the value for what we want the land for and to see whether if we compensate the person and use the land to do what we want, will it benefit the country? I think they have to reassess. And it's also a deterrent that if you buy state land dubiously, we'll take it back from you. So
you go to court and you spend more to recover the land. You see, the person that you give the land to will get far more than he gave you to take the land.
You see, government sometimes does things just to set the precedent that it can be done, also to serve as a warning to the people that even though we spend money to do it, we'll still do it. So that no one will attempt, so that the next person who will attempt, like from the Lands Commission, they have given you this work to do. You also hold some of those people to book. Because if they ask you to go and value a land and sell, they ask you to sell a land at some price, and you go and see that the price they are selling is too small, you, the person in that office who is not a politically exposed person, should talk. This is where I see the public servants and the civil servants not playing a role. It looks as if there is some collusion somewhere trying to allow government state property to be dashed out freely.
This is the first time we're having this conversation and hearing all these solutions.
Yes.
When it comes to government vehicles, for example, STC does the valuation.
Yes.
We have always seen them.
Yeah.
Very ridiculous, you know, and it hasn't ended. What's the guarantee that there will be a new chapter anyway?
You see, JM said he's coming to reset. NDC says we are coming to reset. And they have just started. And Okujotu Ablakwa had a private members bill, and he's talking of trying to give contributions to enrich it. Let's all try to enrich it. Let's insert it into the article that it deserves and ensure that government properties would not be sold that way again. There is the goodwill from the president and his team to ensure that these things are not repeated. So definitely you have to have hope. and I know some of you are good advocates. Fee sitting here is a good advocate. You definitely hold the president to his feet to ensure that he walks the talk. So let's believe that he's doing it. Once he has agreed to do it, definitely we will all push. When it comes to parliamentarians, we all push. Kabiru is sitting here. We all ensure that the bill is passed to make it difficult for politically exposed persons to grab state property, and even grabbing it at a very ridiculous prices that goes against the state. So to me, there is definitely going to be a change. And to promise that you want to reset a country, you want to bring change and make government benefit from its property, I don't think he will renege on it because he may like to create his image, create a new name before he leaves government. And we are ready to support him achieve that.
Okay, thank you very much. And before Kabir, Kofi, sometimes we have heard on the GAD lands, Accra lands, prime lands, the GAD states, they have not been happy at all because when the state acquires the land, it acquires it for a particular, public good. And then before they say Jack, it's being given to individuals. Meanwhile, they have what the law calls the right of first option. And they don't even give them that.
That is part of the whole rubric I'm talking about. So if, for instance, you are holding Laboni land in trust, and for any reason you choose to say, I don't need it again for that purpose, you should not be able to sell it to anybody. Because the law says so. You have to call back the Alodia owners and hand it back to them. Okay? They don't do that. That is why I'm saying that without discussing it, if this matter goes to court, you will find out that it is the state official that makes a mistake. And the mistake can be corrected because it is so unconscionable and so unjust to the totality of all of us, and specifically to, for instance, the Grand people, that reversal is proper, even if it costs money.
You say you hand it over to them, but you have to hand it over to them because the state paid some money. So normally they have to pay back the money. Maybe it's often they don't have the money immediately to pay.
The details
so
of that.
Perhaps should we change the law and say once you buy it as government and you don't want it anymore, give it without demanding any money from them.
If you hand it over to them, it's very complex. For instance, you have used part, you haven't used part. But in the workings of it, you give them the first option. Sometimes you would create a lease where they will be a beneficiary, even sell it to the other person. So again, this is not a place to discuss it, but I am 100% sure that it can be worked out such that state lands and all these things cannot be just handed over to individuals who buy them for peppercorn. All right? They either, if you did an auction, for instance, or whatever it is, the Alodia owners or whatever it is, there are all kinds of arrangements by which they can benefit from what. Look at Airport City. Okay, there was a fight over it, and if the government hadn't done what they did there, that place would maybe be a slum now. But we should have an arrangement where the people who are Alodia owners can benefit from the rents and things that come out of those places. So there are ways to do it, but the way not to do it is to have a chief of staff or some minister or some official say, because we need tools, we are selling it to this particular person. That is definitely wrong.
Okay, Dr. Kabiru.
Yeah, so
is it a good move?
Yeah, before I even come to that directive.
Or for your part, for your side of the political divide, you wish that we draw a red line in the sand from this point, rather than say, take back everything and all of that.
Yeah, so we all are lamenting over this problem because of the regime. Government owes no land. That is a fact. And that land belongs to the good people of Ghana, clans, heads, or families, tools. And if government owes no land, definitely government should not be in the business of selling land. And our laws have allowed the Constitution and also maybe probably Act 125, State Lands Act, has actually allowed the government can acquire under Section 1 any land for the purpose of public good. But there is the reversionary right that has been explained. Explained on this particular platform that when the use for which you acquired it is no more, is not more valid, you return it to the owners. And if government begins to exercise this right, I'm not sure there will be any land for government to sell to people, either at peppercorn prices or market value prices. So that regime has to be looked at, because without that, it will be difficult for us to solve this matter in its entirety. But there's also the bit about the Land Commission, their pricing formula. Ghanaians and their good people doesn't even have insight into their pricing formula. It's totally different from the market. They pay what they call the premium, and you pay ground rent on the land every single year. Okay, but when we are discussing land, we don't look at their pricing regime. We just look at how much is the land sold. It's
upfront.
1 million
What you pay upfront.
not upfront. But the land commission, they pay ground rent every single year on the land.
And you have an idea what these ground rents are?
Well, so it depends on the land,
right,
and the amount. Sometimes you pay 2,000 Ghana cedi a year. Sometimes you pay 1,500. Depending on the land. Okay, so the premium is there, and the ground rent is there. Ghanaians will have to factor all that into the determination of whether or not the land value commensurate with the market value. Without that, we'll be, prosecuting people, or we'll be swallowing the integrity of people for nothing. For instance, the land bought by the NIB boss. We didn't go into these details. We just know the land there is sold for $500,000, but you are buying it for hundreds of dollars, and that is where the problem then comes in. We can lease, but you see, this directive is it's a very good directive. It's very good, and at a point we must come to a determination that those people who acquire lands, either in the NDC or people, have done no wrong. We can go into the question of unconscionable contract. That is a different matter. But once there was no duress, there was no fraud, there was nothing of that sort, and I legally acquire land from the state, no one I should go and sleep and peacefully enjoy my property without any, hindrance.
Do you think the reaction that you get from the public would be the same if these lands were being sold to the civil servant at the lowest, range?
It will not.
At these prices?
Unfortunately, we will not have the same reaction. We are having this perception that because we are politically exposed, we are taking advantage of the power and advantage of the authority and the trust.
Is it just perception?
And the trust. And we acquire this property. Rightly so, because the politically exposed people have the benefit of even knowing that they are going to sell those land before the ordinary Ghanaian gets to know.
Right.
Okay. So that there's going to be difference in that, and then our attitude is going to be totally different. But this order is very good. But the problem that I have with the order is, what is the scope of that order? What is the scope of order? You can't then all of a sudden decide to think that...
This one is to foreign affairs lands.
Yes, so that foreign affairs land, what is the scope? Every single foreign affairs land that should be reversed, or those that were acquired in the last 4 years. So you see, when you are taking a measure as a government, you want to carry the country along.
So this is what it is, as communicated by the Foreign Affairs Minister. President Mahama has directed the reversal of all allocations and sale of land belonging to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs by the previous government to be done immediate reversal. So immediately.
And that's the problem with the directive.
And he actually identifies that the directive ensures that the ministry's land at Airport Residential, claimed by 7 organizations and individuals, will now be cancelled and preserved for the people of Ghana. So for Airport Residential alone, you have 7 organizations and individuals who took these lands and who are supposed to now surrender them.
So that's the problem with the directive. It gives a sense that you are targeting sales of land at limited to a particular regime. But if you want to carry the good people of Ghana along, you have to take a definite principle that we are going into the review of the sales of land belonging to the foreign ministry, and we are reviewing every single allocation and then revoking same if there need be.
Would there be a termination point, or
that's what? For instance, it has become topical issue. We can use, in the interest of equity, the president can start with his regime to create the sense that, look, I'm even reversing into the tenure I was the president. He may not want to go to Rawlings' regime, he may not want to go to Kufuor's regime, but because he has this unique opportunity of having served as a president and now coming back, he can say, I will to even include under my tenure. It gives you the moral right, it gives you the buy-in of every Ghanaian. But if you limit it to the NDP regime, people will not. They feel like, look, because we were those selling those land and probably we have sold it to our, quote unquote, our favorite, that is why you are coming after them. But if we extend it 4 years So in the last, let's say, 12 years, that will have the buy-in. And I'll urge
he who wants to do equity must come with clean hands.
Exactly. So that is what the president has to do. If he feels short of doing this, that measure will not be if you like, will not be applauded by the good exception of the Ghanaian public.
And I urge the law to stop the future.
To stop. And if, in fact, into the future, I believe that we should all, every politically exposed person should not have business dealing with.
But practically, what do you think? If he has to extend it to when he was president, that would be back how many years ago?
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah. And those properties would have been developed fully.
That's the problem. Yeah.
That even goes to the allocation. Some properties have been developed in the last 8 years. So that is still the conundrum we find ourselves. But that means,
so will you suggest that the directive should be targeted to those who purchased or those who acquired those lands but have not yet developed them?
So that will be fair to the developers and the individuals. That would be a very fair point to make. But of course, you have to pay damages. You have to pay some compensation to those people anyway, because it is a contract you entered into. And that contract, someone has fulfilled a part of his obligations, and then you are reneging on that contract. You definitely have, it will come at a cost to the state. But if it's a principal decision we are taking, or position we are taking, I believe the government can come in, stop the sale of state land. And I think that moving forward, we should all, most of us, we are all victims, or if you like, being part, different government, we've all been part of it. So it is time, I said different government, we've all been part of this business of selling state properties. That's the point I'm making.
Right.
And once
we said all of us.
At each point, they give it a different name. They have a re-zoning, something, redevelopment.
And you remember the case of
infilling.
Like in Lamoni. They use infilling.
The former chairman's case will put a black one.
Right.
It settled the matter. But we need to look at it in much more comprehensive terms. And I agree that maybe the president can revise it to mean undeveloped acquisitions.
Right.
And then probably...
And another corporate leader sends me a message. He says, PEPs, that is politically exposed persons, include the children of politicians.
Yes. Yeah. Even relatives.
Why? They should also be prohibited. Yes. So if you are making the law, you shouldn't say they should also be prohibited. They should just say former politicians, not politically exposed persons. Great panel, great discussion. I've come to the conclusion that the bane of our nation can be summed up in 2 words: greed and indiscipline. If we can't cut these by just 20%, the positive impact will marvel all of us. Most of the ills in our society, such as corruption, the destruction of our environment, shoddy public work, roads, littering, wastage of public resources, etc., are fueled by greed and indiscipline. While we work at these, we must reset our educational system to prioritize values. Value-based education will not only address greed and indiscipline, but will produce truly patriotic and honest public citizens. This is Dr. Clement Abbas Apak, Deputy Minister Education, sending in. And the Special Prosecutor, Kisei Jabing, also had this to say, that we need to look at our education system, need to look at our culture of gift giving, and all of that. Otherwise, this fight against corruption will not be won. We take a break, but before we do that, Dr. Arthur Kennedy said that oral was a good start, but these things must be taken note of. 1, open judgment debt books. 2, act on audit reports. And you hear me, I'm a broken record on that also. What's the name? My friend here,
Kofi.
I like to call him Rebel, so sometimes I'm forgetting to say Kofi Bento. They used to do this thing where they would take the Auditor General's report and audit the Auditor General's report for years. And at a point, Occupy Ghana did the same thing, just 5 years of Auditor General's report. The money stolen and the money's misuse for 5 years was far in excess, 3 times what we have gone to the IMF to borrow, 3 billion.
And you know why we stopped?
Why did you stop?
Nobody cared. No action.
But you had this key guy who was on it. What's his name again?
Is it Dennis?
No, he passed. Oh, I've forgotten his name. This fair gentleman. Is it Casely?
Oh,
Casely.
Coleman. He didn't pass.
No, Casely.
Casely, yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, no, in Occupy Ghana.
Oh, okay. That's why I can.
Okay, if I remember his name.
Okay, Occupy did some work also.
Right.
And I think we should.
He says,
act on it.
Arthur Kennedy says, act on audit reports. Lifestyle audit. Lifestyle audit. The special prosecutor also mentions that president must sack corrupt ministers. In your own regime, sack the corrupt ministers. Then he says, Parliament must not appropriate money to ministries with negative audit findings. Publish asset declarations. Demand accountability from anti-corruption bodies. When an anti-corruption body takes more public money than it recovers, it should not continue to exist. And he says that also institutionalize e-procurement. And then but his final point, he says, demand accountability from anti-corruption bodies. When an anti-corruption body takes more public money than it recovered, it should not continue to exist. And he says, my apologies. I need to catch a flight. Best wishes to Dr. Tony Edu. Thank you, Dr. Arthur Kennedy. We'll take a quick break. We'll return. And Kesley Hayford. I meant to say Kesley Hayford.
Oh,
yeah.
Sydney
Kesley Hayford.
Sydney
Kesley Hayford. He was like the guy on that beat all the time.
I remember.
We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Thanks to Dr. Eric Oduro-Osai and the rest who have reminded me. Thank you.
In opposition 2013 to 2016, I often had businessmen sharing documents with me, and they will encourage you to speak about it on radio, corruption. But later on in life, when I understood how dark Accra was, I realized that those who don't get their contract through are the ones who complain of corruption. But those who get theirs through, they go to church in white and thank God.
Here I am to tell you a bit of what I have encountered in the fight against corruption. It seems to me that as it stands, there are only a few good men among us. Hopefully, the pieces I shared today will spur us on collectively to comprehensively suppress and repress corruption and state capture. The special prosecutor is a very thankless job. It fetches you droves of enemies daily, and it brings you into frontal contact with the lowest forms of debasement in humans. You do not go asking for it. It finds you. That is the nature of the job. Everyone wants the special prosecutor to do his job, yet no one wants the special prosecutor to do his job. It all depends on the subject of the investigation. This paradoxical predicament is perhaps an index of the human condition, which is that though we accept that we need to rein in corruption, yet no one wants to yield freely to scrutiny. No one happily accedes to indictment. No one welcomes investigations. No one wants to be called out as suspected of engaging in corruption and corruption-related activities. And so, there is always a strong pushback intended at deflecting the focus of scrutiny and accountability.
And that was, Special Prosecutor Kisi Ejabing speaking at the One Ghana Movement Annual Constitution Day Lectures at the Alisa Hotel with Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh as a reviewer of the lecture. You had the IGP, Dr. Kufu Dampare, also in attendance. I spoke about the IGP the other day here last week, and some people came at me. You don't know me the way I do my things. Your enemy is not my enemy. Oh. Me, I'm just doing my work. If I see that somebody is doing good, I'll talk about it. The fact that you don't like them is a different game altogether. And you can dislike somebody, but look at their work and let their work speak for them as well. He spoke on the topic, a few good men suppressing and repressing corruption and state capture in aid of development. So for those of you who have had the opportunity of reading some of the things he has had to say, once again, maybe I'll begin with Kofi Bento. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time, but let me hear what you have to say.
So, all true, but nothing strange. You have a country like we have, and then Lawyer Jabin is given the job that he has been given, and he's right. We all want to change. We all want to change, but nobody wants to change. Okay, off camera, we're talking about some of the things that go on, and you know, everybody's doing it, and when you don't do it, you feel like a fool. Okay, but I think that Lawyer Jabin is the right kind of person to do that. He's a steely individual. I mean, he's a hard person. So I feel for him, but I also know he's not surprised. I think he's sending us a certain reflection of our society, so we have a greater understanding of what he has to deal with. But it comes with the territory. If you're going to be special prosecutor with all these powers, and that's why we all advocated for the kinds of, independence and kind of, the nature of the office that he's been given. In fact, I think I am really pushing hard that all prosecution should go to that office instead of the Attorney General, which is political, and you're going to get knowledge prosecutors. If all the prosecutions over which we've seen knowledge prosecutors were at the special prosecutor's place, a change of government may not affect much. So that office is useful. We may even need to expand it, but the lamentations of Mr. Jabin are real. And for people like him and his family, we need to spare a thought because they really more or less sacrifice themselves. So we should take care of them, and I think we take care of them. All that said, it is for our general good. Now, if we have some of the laws that we are talking about now, which stop people from doing certain things, he will have an easier life. So I hope we work together. We don't just create problems and leave him to go and solve it and let people come after him.
He said, I am a reluctant occupier of the position of the special prosecutor, in the sense that I neither asked for nor lobbied for it. I am not inclined to recount how I got to sit in this seat, except to say that the position was laid on my head. Sacrificially, I eventually accepted the position after several weeks of prompting. Then he tells us about some of the sacrifices which he says are purely private. He was a public person. He was someone who likes to do his things openly. Now he can't live that life anymore. Some of them, he says, they are impersonal. Then he says that the job is thankless. It fetches you droves of enemies daily. It brings you into frontal contact with the lowest forms of debasement in humans. You do not go asking for it. It finds you. That is the nature of the job. Everyone wants a special prosecutor to do his job, yet no one wants a special prosecutor to do his job. It all depends on the subject of the investigations.
All true. Okay? There's a tree proverb that young candy which here when the mob is not after you, you think it's all fun. But when the power of the state is arrayed against you, even if you are innocent, there's a high price to pay. But you see, he said they laid it on him. Those of us who know him believe that there's a reason why he was picked for the job. And he is not somebody who also accepts a challenge lightly. I have sat before him before when people wanted him to resign. I remember I was in an earlier meeting and I said, we need to do everything to help this gentleman not to resign. And I was happy when he said, I will not resign. So I think he appreciates his job particularly well. What we need to do is to appreciate it together with him. Okay, and I repeat. But
the risk that he comes under, he and his officers, he says that my security risk is ultra high. And I have to perpetually be on the lookout for attacks on my person. Same applies to especially the operational officers of the OSP.
But of course we know, those of us who, we clearly know that if he is going to do his job, he's going to affect people to the tune of millions of dollars. And these people are not playing. They are criminals in an organized arrangement, and they have all kinds of resources. So we know, but that's the point I'm making.
Why must he sacrifice his life for that?
Well, you see, that's the whole. Why do soldiers go to war? To fight for a country.
In this case, it is the politicians setting up a machine to fight corruption, and yet not wanting to fight the corruption. Yes. Why should he, sacrifice for it?
Which is why I'm saying we live in a country like this. Somebody has to run it. We all have sacrifices we've made here and there. But the question again I'm asking is, why does a young man go and join the army and go to fight a war to kill somebody he doesn't know on behalf of other people that he doesn't know and lose his life in the process? In the work of nation building, all kinds of sacrifices have to be made. Now, we have to do our best to support him. I want his office expanded. His security must be better taken care of and all those other things. But I'm saying I am happy that he's there. One of the ways we can support him is to pass some of these laws that stop the 99% of the people he has to deal with who are threatening him are politically exposed persons.
Correct.
99% of the issues come with the kinds of things that they want to achieve through political office, okay, which if we pass the necessary laws can stop them. So it's nation building, doesn't happen. Look, we are 68 this week, okay. 68 is a retired person plus 8 years. But in the scheme of nations, the US is 250 years old. They are dealing with Donald Trump today, all right? We are a toddler in the scheme of nations. Check how old Britain is. Check France. So we need to get things in perspective that we cannot expect perfection of ourselves, but these are the things that we do to move one step towards it. And what we do is to build these institutions to be stronger over time.
Doc, at 68, the special prosecutor says we have had about 50 corruption-related commissions of inquiry and 5 successful military coups in the name of fighting corruption. Mm-hmm. This is what we have done.
Yeah.
And yet, we don't seem to want to fight the corruption. Mm-hmm. Since we set up the special prosecutor in December of 2017 and then tooled it up to do what it has to do. Unfortunately, he says that we are doing things as in the political class, and the people that they have to investigate. They have what he calls the wherewithal, they have the wealth, and so they engage in misinformation, disinformation, and to get the people's turn against those who are fighting it.
Right. I look at what he has said to be like leaders or leadership of the country set up anti-corruption agencies as a screen smoke. Mm-hmm. That is how I see it. Mm-hmm. From his lamentation. Smoke screen. So that behind it they are doing what they want, and you occupy an office, and at the end you either agree to them or they deal with you, because he's talking about threat of his life, threat of the life of his workers. And we know that Ghana, from statistics, from publications, is losing almost $3 billion a year on corruption.
Professor Stephen Adair says that number may have doubled.
Right, I'm using what has been...
This is an old number.
Yes, so let's just look at it. And we have an office that has gotten just 100 and something million to fix it and then the rest, knowing very well that it's a new office that has been set. I think it is evolving, it is growing. Now that he has come to give out complaints about how he's suffering with his staff and his family and his life is also in danger, we would have to take a second look about how to protect anybody who is occupying that office and who will subsequently protect that office. This is simply because the people who are into corruption, like Bentil said, are those who are seriously involved in politics or they have serious links with politics. They are the ones who are supposed to even help you help you prosecute the corrupt people. And if they themselves are involved in the corruption, definitely they would like to pull strings. And they have the power, they have the wealth, they have the connections with the security, they have the connections with the media, they have the connection with some grassroots social media people who can destroy your image very, very fast. So I think that his lamentations are good. Let's take it on board and ensure that anybody who is found culpable by him should be handed to him to prosecute, instead of giving it to the Attorney General, like you said, to prosecute. Then also give the holder of those offices the needed protection. After all, the Electoral Commissioner had military and a MOAC standing at a house. And if you're also defending her, so we have to provide the needed security. But
the
my advice
prosecutor also has some military, but they were taken away.
That is not fair to me. If his life is in danger and he has informed the security agencies that his life is in danger, this is a person that we must all protect.
So we are getting to appreciate that the times that he didn't live in the country,
yes,
it was for his life.
Right.
And some people said he was living outside and drawing money.
Yeah.
But he was out of the country because his life was under threat.
Yeah, let's all understand that this institution came in because Iyoko was failing, Siraj was failing, all other anti-corruption institutions were failing. And they brought this agency in to come and really head-on fight corruption, but he's finding difficulties with it. So we have to really look at the act that established it, or we have to look at the act that established it to see what we can do to enhance security, to give them that independence. And anybody taking that place should be aware that you are going to be confronted with these challenges. Right. And you take it as a national, as somebody who wants to fight against corruption. And leadership, look, corruption prevails because perhaps we are not fighting over because leadership is not out wholeheartedly to ensure that corruption stops. Because we've had other countries that have been able to minimize corruption to the barest minimum.
Right.
Sanctions to people who are found corrupt are very detrimental and deterring enough that you can't indulge in it. China, go and be corrupt and see what will happen to you. Go to Rwanda and get corrupt and see what will happen to you. Today, go to Burkina and get corrupted and see what will happen to you. It's because our laws are so flexible and so loose.
I was listening to Abraham Amaliba.
Yes.
He said he was in Rwanda, he was leaving the airport.
Yes.
And like it happens to all of us some of the times,
yes,
you are leaving and there's currency that's not much. You don't want to take it to your country. Maybe you have kept some as memorabilia and it's enough. You don't want to accumulate. So he took the money, change that was in his hand, and he tried to give it to an officer at the airport. The officer said he wouldn't dare do that. And he was warned that he should not do that.
There's a reason. Because
in Ghana, that's doing good to somebody.
Yes. See, they have been trained to live like that. And the culture is such that you can't take what does not belong to you. Go to Dubai. Go to Dubai. I've gone to Dubai before, left my phone in a taxi. And I tell you, they looked for my hotel and brought back the phone to me.
It's not trading.
It's the way laws work. Because if you
because you're running out of time, let me get to Dr. Kabiru. It's not only he painted a picture, but he also gives solutions. And because the chair of the Constitution Review Committee was there, he said, write the OSP into the Constitution so that it will not be at the...
And let's write out all the moribund institutions.
Before I just briefly, 30 seconds, my senior colleague has just noted that as part of the framework for addressing the land grab issue, maybe we can include a provision of prior approval of Parliament, so that they will know that before a sale, Parliament will have to burn up the land. So I think it's a very solid suggestion. On the OSP, I understand the OSP frustrations. The OSP was set up by the former president to fight corruption, which we all admit is a national canker. But unfortunately for the OSP, we are practicing a very democratic regime where the rights of individuals would have, even no matter how criminal-minded they are, would have to be litigated. So when he comes off as someone facing that kind of opposition, I understand why he should be concerned. But look, fair hearing, Article 19 of the Constitution grants that. Okay, and the OSP is using the law to fight corruption, but it's not the law. That is sometimes the difference, and I have the feeling that the OSP, being a lawyer of repute, doesn't come to appreciate that, look, in fighting corruption, the law, the very law you are using to fight the corruption will come back limiting how you can operate. And if he doesn't appreciate that, he will easily give up. But I think that he has to appreciate that and then work within the law. If someone is litigating his right, he must give the person the fullest of opportunity to insect his right.
Okay.
So if the OSP is not doing that, then he will be frustrated. Okay. But the thing about OSP, I think we should support him. A threat to his life.
He says he wants all of us to support.
Yeah, a threat to his life is a threat to the country's sustainability and development, because corruption is a threat to our own collective development.
And I have to especially apologize to you, Dr. Kabiru, because you've had just under 1 minute. to make your point on this. We ran out of time. Thank you also very much. My outfit is by Konati Clothing. You can call them 0244 676732, 0244 676732. And they are doing a special promotion during the month of Ramadan, 15%, between 10 to 15% discount on all what you ask of them. And they are wishing you Ramadan Kareem. So 0244 676732. That is Konati Clothing. And they will make sure you are looking great. Show also brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert and Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fie, Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Syntex Tanks is strong, it's tough. Activa International, our clients are passion. I have seen all your many messages, but unfortunately we are unable to read them. And thank you all for continuing to make this show the biggest and the most authoritative news analysis platform here in the country. Have a good afternoon. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini, and my guests have been Dr. Kabiru Tia Mahama, also Kofi Bentil of Imani, and Dr. Thomas Anaba, MP for Garu. Have a good afternoon.